What's happening, boxing world and fight fans? I am your host, Nice, and welcome back to the Fight Room. If you're not a subscriber, make sure you do for the latest boxing news, feedback, and entertainment. Now, I want to talk about a few things. Of course, the first thing I want to talk about is the undercards first of the Vasyl Lomachenko versus Teofimo Lopez. And not only that, I want to talk about that fight in my final breakdown and thought of what can happen in that fight. And also, I want to talk about Jermall Charlo and Jermell Charlos. They had an impressive bout a couple of weeks ago, and I never had a chance to talk about that fight and the potential fights of the future for the Charlo brothers. Now, first, I want to talk about Edgar Berlanga, that it's going to be in the undercard of this Saturday's matchup between Vasyl Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez. You know, Edgar Berlanga is a young, hungry fighter, rising prospect, coming from Brooklyn, New York, with 14 wins, no losses, and 14 all by knockout in the first round. Pretty impressive power for Edgar Berlanga. Now, he's going to fight a fighter by the name of Leno Bellows. Hopefully I said that correct. And the fighter, has 20 wins, 5 losses, and 13 by knockout. And of course, Berlanga, 14 no losses and 14 by knockout, like I previously stated. Now, it's going to be an 8-round fight. And let me just break down what I think about that matchup. Bob Arum said that Bellows is probably the best fighter that Edgar Berlanga has faced in his career by far. And should be a guy that can pass the first round. And let me say a few things about Bellows. 5'9", and Berlanga 6'1". And of course, Berlanga has the height advantage. Now, let me talk about Bellows and what I think about him. He started at 21 years old, been fighting for quite a while. And, he's a power shooter. He doesn't really throw with soft jabs or punches. He packs a lot of heat in throwing. Not saying that he has power. He does have 13 knockouts out of his 20 wins, but he throws with power. He likes to throw with a lot of power, and he likes to apply pressure and look for the fighter. So it's interesting for Edgar Berlanga. Hopefully this could be a fight that we can see Edgar Berlanga display some worth ethics in boxing, and hopefully we can see how he moves and how he boxes, because for the last 14 fights he's been knocking everyone out in the first round, and we all know he packs great power, great power, and I can't take nothing away from him for that. But I want to see what Edgar Berlanga can do besides knock people out. I want to see how he can be rangy, how he can move his footwork, how he takes a punch as well. So to me, I believe that Bellows is that type of fighter that can bring a challenge for Edgar Berlanga, at least to go past the first round at least. And Bob Arum stated that as well, so hopefully we can see that happen in that fight. But overall, man, I think Edgar Berlanga is just a good prospect on his way. Of course, we haven't seen really much of him because of his power, knocking everyone out in the first round. But I hope that we can see something come this fight. And I believe that he's a special fighter as well, man. I know he's a focused fighter. He doesn't take time off, he said. I previously seen one of his interviews, and he says he's always a focused fighter. He doesn't like to give himself no room for breathing. He doesn't like to slack off. And, he's a real good future contender in the middleweight division. And he also wants to fight, of course, we all heard that he wants to fight Canelo Alvarez and Benavidez, and those guys are well seasoned and prepped. So, it can be, in the future, it could be a great fight for Berlanga, but of course Berlanga has to show his skills and how he can take a punch, because we all know that Benavidez, not for nothing, man, Benavidez is a good fighter and a hard puncher, and also is Canelo. So, it's a pretty big plate that he wants to eat. And hopefully it won't be too early for Berlanga, and they don't throw Berlanga with them two fighters. I know that Berlanga wants to fight those guys, but I believe that Berlanga should take his time. You know, he's coming up, he's rising up, and people see that he is a potential star. You know, I believe that, but I hope that he takes his time. Hopefully he hears this and, you know, takes some advice in that. I know he's hungry, he wants to prove himself, but I believe the best thing he can do is just be patient and wait, and he shall see the glory of being patient. Now, on the other undercard on that fight on Saturday night, it's Arnold Barboza Jr., a good fighter as well. He's going to be taking on Alex Saucedo. Now, a lot of people know Alex Saucedo. He's a good fighter, and his most notable fight was with Leonard Zepavenga, and that was a hard, brutal fight on ESPN Top Rank Promotions on, I believe, a couple of months ago. And, you know, it was a brutal fight, man. If y'all never seen that fight, you have to check that fight out with Alex Saucedo and Leonard Zepavenga. Excuse me. You know, it's a hard name to pronounce. But it was a brutal fight, one of the most brutalest fights I've seen in a long time. Those guys were hitting each other with everything in the kitchen sink. And we all see them bloody and battered, man, in that fight. And it was brutal, man, very brutal. And Alex Saucedo came up with the victory via 7th round TKO. The referee came in and stepped in that bout. And man, listen, I gotta say, man, Alex Saucedo he has a big heart. Honestly, he has a big heart. He's a great combination puncher. He likes to go to the body and to the head. And you know, he doesn't pack that much power, but he has ton of heart, and likes to look for the fighter. And Arnold Barboza Jr., I believe, you know, he has a big heart as well. And he has great footwork and great combination punching, and very focused and very smart in picking his punches. So with that being said, man, I believe that this fight with Barboza Jr. and Alex Saucedo is going to be a great fight on the undercard. It is not one to miss. And I guarantee that it's going to be a great fight. I believe so. And don't miss that. Don't miss that. And now I want to talk about, of course, man, last but not least, you know, I broke down the fight in my last video, or prior to my last video. Teofimo Lopez and Vasyl Lomachenko. The war is on. The war is definitely on this Saturday. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about Blood, Sweat, and Tears. You know, about the documentary that they put up, ESPN. And, you know, it started the problem, I should say, with Teofimo Lopez and Lomachenko. You know, the father said that they bumped into him and he went to shake his hand and he kind of played him, you know. And said that he was a little cocky and so forth. And that's where the whole beef started, supposedly. But with that being said, man, you know, Lomachenko I seen the press conference. And it looked like, not for nothing, man, Lomachenko, he didn't seem like, you know, like he was just enjoying his time and his day. He looked at like he had some anger, you know, like looked at real serious and looked like he has anger towards Teofimo. And we seen Teofimo very relaxed, very focused, and very confident in the press conference. So, you know, Lomachenko, man, looked at very stiff in that conference, man, and that speaks a lot. It speaks a lot. The more confident fighter in that press conference to me seemed to be Teofimo Lopez, but that doesn't mean anything. You know, Lomachenko. Let me say, man, Lomachenko is a complete fighter. He's a very complete fighter, and you know his opposition that he's fought was the better fighters compared to Teofimo Lopez. You know, Lomachenko has beaten Linares, you know, man, did a great job on Linares, you know, defeated Gary Russell Jr., Gary Russell Jr., it's a very special fighter in his own class. Let me tell you, he's a very special fighter in his own class, and he defeated him quite well. And, you know, not for nothing, man, Lomachenko is a well-rounded, like I said, complete fighter, very, very special in his own class, I believe. And, you know, it's a lot for Teofimo. It's a lot for Teofimo to consider. you know, because Teofimo, you know, a lot of people talk about his power, and he has power, which of course that's what he's displayed. But like I said before, man, he's very athletic and he packs power, and the young man can box, man. So what I think should happen in this fight for Teofimo to see if he can win the victory is that he would have to try to stop Lomachenko's footwork, because Lomachenko likes to use the ring, is very smart, man. He's a very, very smart fighter, and he likes to use his footwork to lunge in and put the pressure on fighters, and we've seen that with Lomachenko. Now, if Teofimo can cut the ring, cut him off, and use his foot for Lomachenko not to move to his left or to his right, and he can bring the fight to him and start to bang him out in the body, in the head, and put very much pressure on Lomachenko, it can be a problem for Lomachenko in that fight. And we all know that at the 135-pound division, Lomachenko has been taking a lot of hit as of late, you know, with Pedraza and so forth, and Linares, and people want to not for nothing, people want to discredit Pedraza, but Pedraza was doing quite well, man. And not for nothing, ESPN stated that, you know, he only packed, you know, gave him 12% of his punching power, which is something that I can disagree with. Y'all can go back to that fight and see for yourself that Lomachenko was pretty lumped up in that fight with Pedraza. So, you know, that's just, you know, them hyping Loma up, which is okay. I understand they have to what, you know, sell the ticket for Lomachenko. You know, it is what it is. But, you know, Teofimo in his own class, he's special as well. I believe he's a special fighter. Like he said, man, in the conference, the fighter has to bring the best out of him. And we all know that Teofimo, you know, his competition hasn't been as great as Lomachenko. Lomachenko has the better opposition in his career. And of course, we know that Lomachenko has more of the experience out of the two. You know, Lomachenko only lost 2 fights in his career, and he gained 1 back, and he lost to Orlando Salido. He couldn't, you know, go back and fix that and win that bout in a rematch. They didn't make a rematch clause to that fight, so he stood with that loss and never could retain that loss. But besides the fact, Lomachenko is very, very special, and you know, he's, you know, it's a lot. You know, Teofimo has a problem in his hands with Lomachenko, let me tell you, and then vice versa. Lomachenko has a problem in his hands with Teofimo, because to me, I believe that Teofimo is the hardest puncher and the most hungriest fighter that Lomachenko has ever faced in his career come Saturday, October 17th. So with that being said, man, Lomachenko said, another thing, Lomachenko said that he's going to have to come very aggressive. And I really believe that Lomachenko is going to come very aggressive, but he's going to come with smart aggression, not just, you know, punching all over the place and can set himself up for a knockout. You know, he doesn't want to do that. But I noticed that Lomachenko, you know, like with the fight with Linares, when he was fighting Linares, and he got overconfident with Linares, and that's how Linares threw that straight right and happened to drop Lomachenko. So hopefully Lomachenko doesn't do that come this Saturday with Teofimo, overconfident in beating him, or let's say annihilating, let's just use that word, on Teofimo, and he could open himself up for the counter attack and could be dropped himself. So hopefully that won't happen for Lomachenko. But with that being said, man, this fight is a great fight overall, man. I just wanted to bring this fight one more time. I wanted to just elaborate some more on the fight. You know, my last video on it didn't do too well on elaborating, but I wanted to elaborate this time some more. And, you know, to me, it's more of a 55-45 fight. And I believe that Lomachenko should pull it off, because he's just a special, well-rounded fighter. But not taking nothing away from Teofimo Lopez, a hungry, strong power puncher. And I believe that he has a lot of athleticism. And like he said, a fighter would bring the best out of him. And I believe that Lomachenko is going to bring the best out of Teofimo. And not only that, I believe that we're going to see the best Teofimo Lopez come that night as well. And, you know, I spoke with somebody told me that that Teofimo will get annihilated come Saturday night. But you know, I think the young man is special in his own class, and I disagree with that. But you know, let's see. Like if Lomachenko could devastate him and embarrass him in that fight, man, without a doubt, man, I would consider Lomachenko seriously to be the number one for sure. You know. But let's see what happens on Saturday night. Y'all already know, man. It's your boy Nice. Like, comment, subscribe. Till then, share the fight room.